Welcome to another G4 Guitar Teacher Hangout. My name is David Hart, coming to you here from Kyoto. And what we're going to do today is, in this hangout, is we're going to talk about, the topic is called conflicts and contradictions. And what I want to do is just go through some of the things that, we obviously see other people do, but these are examples from people that I've spoken to. And there are thousands of examples, whether it's teachers or students, and you're going to see that you're going to recognize some of these in yourself. You're going to recognize them in your students and other people. But these are just some examples, rather than me sort of trying to come up with standard type of contradictions that people have or conflicts that they have. I just thought I'd give you a couple of examples that came to mind, which hopefully will spur on some other ideas. And one of the things, before I even launch into those, one of the things about conflicts, that we have within ourselves, is they actually hold us back. We don't realize that we have these goals that we're trying to achieve, but there's a conflict between what we want and what we actually believe in. So these examples really are just to kind of open your mind to that and maybe see some in yourself. And it's really interesting once you start to get into it. I got into this some years ago, and I saw the things that were holding me back that I wasn't even aware of. And once you recognize them and become more, I don't know, just more mindful around the things that you do that are actually a conflict to what you want, what you're trying to achieve, you can start to break it down, and you can look for either different ways to operate, or just change your mind, have a different approach to whatever it is that you're thinking about. So we'll start with number one, and we'll just call this person number one. This is an example of a teacher, and this could be 100 different people that I've spoken to, but I'll just kind of put it into one. And that is, this particular person was telling me that they were struggling to get students but couldn't afford to do marketing. Now, the contradiction here obviously is that they want more students, but they're not willing to spend any money on marketing. They're not willing to actually spend the money. So I've been through this with many people, where I'll go through different scenarios and I'll say, okay, you don't have the money. How about the time? Have you got time to go out and do some marketing? No, I can't afford time off work because I need the money to pay my bills and blah, blah, blah. So they're kind of in this situation. And what they do is they end up going around in circles. And I've spoken to people like this where I've come back to them a year later, and they're still going around in the same circle, where they say that students are really hard to get. And what I do is I send out emails every now and again about where are you at, how many students have you got, and what challenges do you have. And the answers that I get back are, well, I'm about the same place I was a year ago. I still don't have any more students. Okay, well, tell me what's going on. Tell me your marketing plan. And the answer that I often get back is, well, I did a few of the flyers, or I did this, or I did that, but I didn't get much response. Okay, how much did you do? Well, I did about 200 flyers and no calls. And I go through it again and say, well, you understand that you get one inquiry per 1,000 flyers. So if you do 200, you can't expect any response. Yes, but I couldn't afford to print any more, or I didn't have the time, I couldn't afford to take time off work, blah, 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 blah. So there's this conflict that's going on. It's not that the flyers don't work. It's not that certain styles of marketing don't work. It's not that this business doesn't work. It's that they have a conflict. And the thing that I always come back to is that the guy down the road, or in the next suburb, or someone else, if someone within the G4 network is succeeding, even if one of them is succeeding, it means someone's doing something right. And we know that it's more than one, and we know most of you have got quite a few students. And it's that conflict within this particular person, and this type of person, I should say, it's not one individual, that's holding them back. So that's just one example. I'll move on to number two. Number two says, teaching guitar is not about the money, but they then complain that they don't have any money. And I think we've all seen this one. And you'll hear it all the time, and this is a huge one, where people will say things like, I'm not about the money. For me, it's not about the money. And then almost in the same breath, they tell you that money's tight, that they can't afford to do this, that if things were better, whatever. And so it is about the money. And so there's this kind of dishonesty, but it is a conflict within themselves. And I understand this because I have, the parent dynamic, where one parent it's almost kind of like opposite. One of my parents came from money. The family had plenty of money. They were wealthy. But that particular parent, and I won't even say which one it was, that particular parent decided that they didn't want anything to do with money because they just thought that money was a bad thing. And so that particular parent took that route in life of don't need money. But that same parent financially has been struggling ever since I can remember. And my other parent, who didn't take that route, who actually came from a family with no money or with not much money, took the route of going into business and making money. And that particular person, for most of their life, did well. There was, I won't say it always, they had some ups and downs. But the other side of that, in that case, it was about the money, and that person was quite honest about the money and wanting to make money and to earn it. But I'm not saying that the one's bad or good. They're my parents, right? They both loved them both dearly, but they both came from kind of different situations, and because of that, I had this, I guess I adopted this conflict of, well, which parent is right? Which way should I go? I can see merits on both sides of it. So in a way, I had this kind of thing. As I started to do well, I would always kind of pull myself back and just say, oh, I don't want to start being about the money. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. And that was always, integrity was always a big one for me. But I realized that both my parents had high integrity, and they both taught me those things. And it wasn't the money that makes you that. And so once I sorted that out, the conflict went away. But there was a conflict there for a long time because we don't realize, and I think I've spoken about this before, but we're actually we see that, and you can see it all over YouTube, and there's lots of different videos on it, on how the rich people are, the Illuminati, are conspiring against the rest of the world to make the rest of us poor and hungry and starving, which you can believe that argument if you like, and there'll always be people out there who exemplify that. There'll always be crazy, evil, greedy people, no matter what situation you're in, who are out there and trying to gather as much as they can for whatever reason. But at the same time, we have to look around us and go, well, hang on, that's not what's happening. Most people do pretty well. We're all, in our countries anyway. But the fact is that what we're really brought up on, if you look at it, is the opposite. We're brought up with the idea that rich people are evil and poor, struggling people are good, genuine, kind people. And we only have to think of classic stories and classic movies about, there's so many of them that exemplify that, of being poor and coming from that very working class background. If we think about some of the classic movies over the time, things like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and this kid who was practically starving with 4 grandparents sleeping in one bed, and his father working at some factory and just trying to get enough money together, and so we had this idea that the poor little boy, things were so tough, so hard, and so that's why he was a good boy. But the rich kids, they were just spoiled, horrible people. So we got this straight away from a young age. We're getting this kind of input. And so you can see it's easy to see where the conflict comes from. And you look at a movie like Rocky, which was big when I was a kid. The same again. Rocky came from the poor existence, and then when he became rich, he became a horrible person. So it was associating all that, and we're taking that in all the time. We have to remember that our brains are being conditioned into believing that money is evil. But the truth about it is money is not evil. People can be evil. People can do evil things. That's probably more to the point. And when people have got money, they've got more power to do evil things, but they also have the power to do good things. So if you don't trust yourself, and this is something that really resolved the conflict to me, it was that, well, I trust myself. I know that as I get wealthier, I'm not going to become the kind of person. I'm not going to do things with the money that are evil doings. So that's where the conflict can be resolved if you have that conflict. And don't be surprised if you do have the conflict. And that's why I'm sort of spending a fair bit of time on this second one, because most people who come from that working class background definitely have that conflict within them, and that's because of the conditioning. You go back and look at the stories and the movies and the kind of things that you grew up on, the classic Disney stories, the classic children's stories, and you'll see this theme running through the whole thing. So number 3, Person 3 says this: the students are inconsistent, yet the teacher is cancelling lessons and shifting students around to suit themselves. Now, it's funny when I on this one, sometimes when I talk to teachers, they don't realise they're even doing it at first. They say things to me like, the students are not practicing, or they're not turning up, or they're missing lessons for one reason or another, or they're late, and so they're inconsistent. So I say to them, okay, let's have a look at you and just see whether you're consistent. And sometimes they get defensive about that. Oh, I'm fine, you know, I don't do anything wrong. Well, hang on, let's just look at it. You know, just go with me on the exercise here and let's see. So I'll go through them and say, okay, do you ever move students around? Do you ever shift your timetable? And they say, oh yeah, of course. You know, if I've got a student at 6 o'clock and then the next one's at 8 o'clock, then because the others are cancelled, then I'll ring the one at 8 o'clock and tell them to come earlier. So, you know, why sit around for an hour and a half when I don't need to? And my answer is simple: because you're being inconsistent. What's happening is that student, now you've changed their time. So that student then feels that they can change their time, or they should be able to change their time because you change their time when it suits you. So there's that inconsistency there. The second scenario is when students turn up late, and this, you know, when I was training teachers and working within my schools, this was something that I was very tough on with the teachers, and I'd say, you run the lessons on time. Run on time. And they say, well, I don't want to cut the lesson short, if, you know, because sometimes the students turn up late, and, you know, we start 5 minutes late, and so I don't want to. And so there was one particular teacher who, you'd turn up at 7 o'clock at night, and he was running like half an hour late. His classes weren't starting until the next time. And I said, this is crazy. How does this happen? And he just said, oh, it just gets away from me. You know, the first lesson is 5 minutes late, the second lesson then becomes 10 minutes late, etc. He said, it's not me. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the students are turning up late, so I can't even start on time if I wanted to. And then I went to him and I said, do you understand why the students are turning up late? And no. And I said, because you're running late. So if you run late, they're not going to turn up on time because they know you're running 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes late. So if you do that consistently, then they're going to consistently turn up late, so you end up with this whole thing pushed to a later time. So what you got to do is be on time, and that way everybody else will be on time. And the other thing too is that when you get students who are good, who are consistent, who do turn up at the same time every week, who do start their lessons on time and are ready on time, what happens when you're late is those students don't hang around because they don't want to wait around. They just think this is not a good operation, so they go somewhere else. So you end up with all those students who are latecomers, who are, you know, don't mind it. What you want are the students who do run on time, who are very specific about doing things consistently. So just to go over those three again very quickly. Person number one tells me that he's struggling to get students but can't afford to do any marketing. So obviously the conflict there is that he is not prepared to do what needs to be done to get more students. He just thinks that business is not good, and it's surprising how many of them think and believe that things are tough. And I look across the network, G4, and we've got, we really have a great bunch of teachers who are doing well there, but there are a few who are struggling, and they know who they are. I'm not going to say names, and they know why they're struggling, and it comes back often to this first one about they're not doing enough marketing. And they come back to me. The difference, I think, we have this kind of honest relationship where they'll say to me, look, I know I'm not doing enough. I'm really, I know it's me. I know I need to do more. But okay, you can tell me that, but it's still not going to change the situation until you actually do more. Number two was, the person says that teaching guitar is not about the money, but complains about being broke. We talked about that enough, so I think you got that one. Person number three says the students are inconsistent, yet cancels lessons and shifts times around. So there's that inconsistency. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go to you guys and see if you can give me some examples or any scenarios or stories, because it could be within yourself, it could be within someone else. But again, no names as always. Just if you want to give me some examples. So I'll start with who I go from Trevor here on the right. Trevor, can you give me any scenarios on this one?
So basically, from one of the three things you've been through, just a scenario that fits that one is what you're thinking. Probably three. I think that's probably my weakest area. Is I tend to be not firm enough with policies, especially if it comes to maybe things like people turning up a bit late or wanting to change lesson times around, that sort of thing. I wouldn't sound guilty of messing students around to suit me, but I think I would feel if somebody turns up 5 minutes late, I find it very hard to say, right, that's it, half past, out you go. Even if I don't have another student, who's actually waiting outside, I feel like, oh, come on, like, that's a bit unfair. Just give them a little 5 minutes extra. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's from what you're saying. Obviously, that's giving them the message that it's okay. I'll just roll up whenever I want, and he'll just roll the lesson over for me.
Yeah. That's good. It's good that you say that and you're being open and honest about that, because what I'll do is I'll just sort of tell you what I would do in that situation, and I know exactly how you feel. Someone turns up 5 minutes late, and what you don't want to do is, knowing you don't have a student straight after them, and especially in the early stages when you're building your business, you don't have a lot of students, cutting them right off. Let's say they turn up 5 or 6 minutes late, and cutting them right off on the half an hour feels like, whoa, But what I did with them was say, we were able to find the place okay, getting here on time okay. So if you just show concern and say, look, was there any problem getting a park around here, or did you find the traffic was heavy? So doing that and just showing concern is a way of raising the idea of being here on time, and without actually, saying, why aren't you on time? So they don't sort of feel offended or go into a defensive mode. So saying to them, and I'll go through it again, saying that, was everything okay? Did you find your way here okay? Blah, blah, blah. And then say to them, if you can, try and get here a couple of minutes early, just so we can start on time. Today, I don't have a student straight after you, so we'll go 5 minutes over. But normally, I will have a student who starts straight after you. So I want to make sure you get that full half an hour. Really important. So is that okay? Can you manage that? Can you do that time? And that way, they'll be very positive about it. So just if you keep it positive, don't let it go, but definitely keep it positive and make a point of it. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Paul, what can you tell us on this? Any stories, scenarios, guilty of anything yourself?
Guilty of the lot, yeah. Guilty of the lot.
Guilty as charged. Yep.
Yeah, but I like to say it's been aware of it, isn't it? And then because I did used to run late and bits and pieces. So that kind of idea in your head, you want to give more, don't you? But in actual fact, like you say, you're inconsistent, so you send off the wrong message. So in your head, you're thinking, oh, I've over-delivered. In their head, the next group's thinking, oh, we're running late. And so it just kind of snowballs, doesn't it?
It does.
But something I've been doing, well, I'm on track of that anyway, so that's something I've been working on for the last few years, so it's something I've kind of tried to get out. It's starting on time in regard to if I haven't got a student before someone or someone's cancelled and the person starts early or turns up earlier, still starting on time. Again, with that consistency. So I think it works both ways. Not finishing obviously late, but not starting late. So I found sometimes when that's happened and I've had a group come into that slot, the people then still come early, sit in the waiting room, just make loads of noise. So you kind of then you've made that problem already, so that's something I've been doing lately. And then if I've got those 5 minutes, I then use it productively rather than start 5 minutes early, because inevitably I'll always end at the right time, so I'll get 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've noticed, and I can't remember the two. I remember one was
number two was about the money, saying that the money's not important to me, yet being broke.
Yeah.
And
marketing was the other one, wasn't it? Sorry.
Marketing was the first one. Yep. It's interesting about being on time, and I'm going to refer a lot to Japan because there's a lot of lessons that we can get from Japan, and so I'll share as much as I can, while I'm here. But the one of the things here in Japan is, you may or may not know, is their train and public transport system, but especially the trains, run on time to the second. They're absolutely, crazy about how, perfect they want to be when it comes to running their train schedules. And it's really nice. It's nice to know that the train's going to arrive when it's supposed to arrive, and you're going to arrive at your destination when you're supposed to arrive. And that what it does, it creates this kind of feeling of I don't know, you just feel like you're in a really good operation. You're part of an amazing system. And if you can think about that with your teaching, that what's actually more important is not over delivering, which I understand, that might seem nice at the time, but what's more important to students is that you over deliver in the time that it's allocated. Over deliver while you're there. And I think you sort of made that point today earlier with Ben about the idea of over deliver, like be really give heaps in the lesson and get the students excited. So that's how I view it. It's like I can't run over time because I've got another student starting or another class starting, and so we start on time, we finish on time, and that's part of the training. And it's having that discipline to what we're doing is we're also teaching them to be disciplined in the way that they're approached. So I want you to come in, I want you to sit down, I want you to be set up in 30 seconds, and I want the lesson to begin. I want you to do your picking warm-up. I want you to have your folders on the stands open to your practice log. These are the things that I want you to do. And so I'm teaching you how to prepare and practice properly. And that's how I viewed my lessons, was that I wasn't teaching you, it wasn't so much about teaching you what to practice, because that's all in there already. We've got all the materials. Yeah, I'm going to teach you things, but essentially what I'm teaching you is how to practice. And that's the most important thing. And the best way to do that is to drill the whole procedure. What we do here, and I'd say it, what we do here, guys, for half an hour is what I want you to repeat at home every day. Same thing. I don't want you to have your mobile phones on. I don't want you to be checking your emails between, while you're practicing. I want you to shut all that down. I want you to go into your practice. I want you to set up within 30 seconds, the same way here, have everything prepared, and start practicing and make the most of that 30 minutes. Because if you do, you don't have to practice more than 30 minutes. But if you muck around and waste your time, then you do have to practice more. You're not going to get a lot done if there's always interruptions. So yeah, so that's part of running on time, is teaching them to manage their own time.
Perfect, yeah.
Cool. And I would say that too. Sometimes I'd say that to parents. I say that I specifically run the lessons on time, and I do everything to a very tight schedule. And the reason I do that is because I want the students to get into the habit of doing things timely. So if you think of yourself as a role model all the time, that what my students will do is what I do. So if I'm unorganized, I can expect them to be unorganized too. If I run late, they're going to run late. If I'm inconsistent, they're going to be inconsistent. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Ben Al-Qaidi, have you got any input here?
I'd definitely say that the first one, I'm not the problem you described, but I'm the next level down on that same tree, because I still haven't got a good record of what's working and what's not for the marketing. So I've just washed my hands of it and said, you do the Facebook done for you adverts, this flyer delivery company, they can deliver 5,000 a week for me, and I'm getting inquiries.
Yeah.
If they mention it, I'll write down where they come from, but I never remember to ask if they don't mention it. So that's a big thing for the first one for me.
Okay, yeah. So you need to get into the habit of asking, and hopefully, that'll be what FileMaker does for you. Is that's going to be the first question that it asks you when you create a new inquiry on FileMaker. The top question is going to be, where do they come from? What's the marketing source? So hopefully you'll be able to answer that question. And that's an important one, because what I talked about this morning was about developing systems and thinking about your business long term, and otherwise having that 5-10 year horizon for your business. And if you have a 5-10 year horizon, you will be a millionaire, no doubt about it. But most people don't have that horizon. What they do is their horizon is 30 days, 7 days. And the reason is that when we think about paying the rent next week or next month, we act differently to if we think about where am I going to be in 10 years' time? What's my life going to look like in 10 years' time? We do things very differently. So in the case of your marketing, you're actually doing good things, because you're delegating the marketing and it's working for you. Yes, you can gather more statistics and learn more about it, but you're always learning anyway. I know what you're like. You're constantly asking questions, and you're prioritizing your life in your own way and what's important to you. And the teaching, I know you take very seriously, which is great. And so the idea is that you don't want to fuss around a lot with the marketing, so you've delegated. It would be different if you didn't do anything. If you were just sitting there trying to work out the teaching with 3 students. That's a different scenario, but you're not doing that. You're actually building your school, you're marketing, you're just not actually out there doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Right, so
but I'm really quite happy with that. Something on the third point though that I wanted to mention, it's way too soon to say I've fixed it, but the starting late was often a problem for me if I had students, or starting early, as Paul was saying, was often something I couldn't see a way around without seeming rude and just being like, you sit in the hall, see you in a bit. But I have started doing that with a couple of additions that have helped me really run on time. One, stupidly obvious. Now I have 2 clocks in the room. One of them I'm facing all the time, rather than the one that's always behind me. And I think, well, I'd like to look at the clock, but it feels rude to just turn my back on the students. And that was just because that was the side the mantelpiece was on. So now I've hung a clock on the other wall. That's half the problem sorted.
Great. Yep. Excellent. Yeah, I was the same. I always put a clock behind the students because I didn't want to appear, like you say, rude. That I was constantly looking behind me to see what time it was. But I needed to know the time because I was running to a clock, and it was important. And it was funny because I remember 1 or 2 teachers saying to me how they didn't feel comfortable with having a clock because it felt like they were watching the clock, so to speak. And my thing was, well, you are watching the clock. You should be watching the clock because every minute counts. If you don't know where you are in the lesson, if you don't know that you're at the 15-minute mark or the 20-minute mark with only 10 minutes and you still haven't got to any point, or you still haven't taught anything, you got a serious problem. So the clock is important. And I remember one of the teachers saying that they had a student complain, like a parent complained about it. Said, you look like you want to get out of here. That's how the parent perceived the teacher, as if they were constantly looking at the clock because all they wanted was for this lesson to be over. And I said, I understand how the parent thinks, but what you've got to do is not give that impression. So you've got to watch the clock, but not give the impression that you want to be out of here. You want to give the impression that you're looking at the clock, and you can even say it if you like, to make the most of the time, that you want to maximize every minute.
I literally mention it. If I look at the clock, I go, this is the time now, so we should probably blah, blah, blah.
Excellent.
Excellent. If it's halfway through a skill session, if we've done 5 minutes of picking and then 5 minutes of the skill, I won't mention it. But it can still say, right, we're halfway through this skill time, let's swap to still the same skill, but let's do something a little different, let's change to a different chord or something.
Yep. And there's nothing that's great. And by even mentioning the clock and talking about the time and where you're at, then it shows that you're looking at the clock for the right reasons. Okay, guys, 5-minute mark, bang, picking's done. We've done our warm-up. Let's jump into the skill number 1. We've got 10 minutes. Let's make the most of it. And it comes across very differently to if you're just constantly looking at the clock. Oh, what time is it? Oh, God, not another 10 minutes with these guys. That's the feeling that the parents were sometimes getting from the teacher. So yeah, that's great.
Can I add one other thing, David?
Yes, please.
A bit of a difference, but that seemed like the obvious one. The other thing was, do you remember we talked about do now, the technique from Doug Lemov?
Yeah. Just go over again.
Yep. Walk in, you have something that they can do. And we used to say that's picking, but I wasn't good at that. It wasn't working for me, just saying do picking exercise 1 or something. So what I've done now is on my whiteboard, I should have been doing this the moment I bought the whiteboard, just write up either a picking exercise or a rhythm or both, and you can say apply the rhythm to the picking exercise.
Perfect.
Also, you just have it there, and I've started making them unpack the guitars outside the room.
Yep.
So now they do walk in ready to go, and within 30 seconds, I don't even need to say anything. They can be playing, open to the practice logs. It's just ridiculously better. And that's at the most 30 seconds till they start, and I can actually stop the lesson 30 seconds before the half hour point. Because my problem was always I'd stop at the end, and then they'd pack up in the room, and then they'd walk out. So the next students are walking in a few minutes late already. Then they're unpacking, so there's no chance of any playing before kind of 5 minutes in. But unpacking and having something to do straight away have made all the difference for me.
It's great because what you've done is you've trained them, you've conditioned them as to how to maximize the time. And so
it's been 1 week so far.
What's that?
It's been 1 week so far, so that's what I'm saying. It seems like it's going to be perfect, but
Yeah.
we'll see if I manage to keep it going.
Yeah, no, it'll probably even get better. You know, you've kind of built that platform there, and you'll start to see them, you know, self-organize, so to speak, where they'll come in and they'll be already doing it, and you'll be like, and that's what happened to me. I was like, wow, you know, they're just doing it themselves. I felt like I could almost not be there, and they would just run through the routine, knowing what they had to do, and that was, you know, to me, that's the ideal. Is that I'm there to instruct them and look at them, but I want to almost be like, kind of one step back to where they're managing their own class, knowing what they got to work on, knowing what they got to go through, and I'm able to then just sort of guide them and give them instructions to say, you know, do this, do that, and I actually saw that too in the I've spoken about it before, the Australian squad swimmers. They do the same thing, and what you're talking about, the whiteboard there. Whenever you know, it doesn't matter where you are in Australia, and if you go to a pool and you see the squad swimmers, you'll always see the whiteboard up there with what they're actually going to do that day. You know, it'll have, you know, 800 meters fly, you know, 600 meters backstroke, whatever, and so it's got their exact training schedule they're going to do that day, and it changes, and so the swimmers know what they got to do, they know the whole thing, and the coach spends most of the time just there with the clock timing them, and you know, and when they sort of, he might give a little bit of correction, but he's not spending, you know, he or she's not spending a lot of time actually talking to the swimmers. Most of the time they're swimming, so they can't hear anyway, and so it's very, very well organized, and that kind of part of, you know, I don't know that I was that conscious of it, but it was that seeing that organization that and me knowing that in my guitar classes, you know, my guitar teaching early on, I wasn't like that at all. I was unorganized, and that's how most people operate, is they operate in this kind of unorganized way. So yeah, that's great. Excellent.
The first thought I get when you said that was, but then you're not doing the teaching. But obviously what we're aiming for is for them to get just perfect knowledge of how to practice.
Yep.
So as long as you're providing feedback, you shouldn't ever have to provide instructions unless it's something new.
Correct. You're guiding them. You know, at the end of the day, we're not trying to make them reliant on us. You know, that's not our goal. Our goal is for them to understand what it's like to become a musician that constantly strives to become better. And once they get that, then they're fine. They're good to go, and they become this. And I think this is a different way of thinking for a lot of teachers, but they really become an example to other people of what comes out of your school. And you know, you go in as a beginner, come out like this, and the faster that we can do that, the better, because it's all about the value coming in. If I can bring you into my school as a beginner, and then a year later you go out twice as good as any other guitar school, and I charge twice as much, your time is valuable. Do you want to take twice as long? No, pay me twice as much and do it in half the time. And that was always my idea, was how can I get you to learn in half the time, or get you there much quicker without having to, you know, because we don't need to drag it out if we can create efficiencies in what we do. And that's really what you know, advancement in any area is about. And that's, you know, that's what technology is. It's all about advancing things to be more, to operate faster, to be more efficient, less errors, and that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to teach students to, and I can see it today. I mean, if I go back to when I was a teenager, people were learning guitar, you just had this whole idea that it took 10 years to become a decent guitar player. We know it doesn't take 10 years anymore. You only have to look at, I don't know if you've seen, there's a Japanese kid she's like 10 years old. She just played with you know, Guthrie here in Japan. He turned up here, and you know, she's phenomenal for a 10-year-old. And so it doesn't take 10 years to learn the guitar. It just takes a few years of real dedication, you know, and real passion. Sometimes it takes time to get the passion and get the dedication and learn how to practice. That takes some years. It took me a long time to work that out. But once you've got that, it doesn't take long. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do, and that's what the G4 really, to me, that's a lot of what G4 is about. Is like, I just want to show you how to do it properly, so you can do it within a couple of years and become an awesome guitar player, rather than taking 10 years to work out how to do it and then 2 years to actually do it. Let's just show you right from the beginning, this is how to do it. You might not like it. It might not always be what you want, but that's the whole skills first approach, is get the skills right. And then I spoke to a guy today, actually, in the US, who really likes what we're doing, and he's from the military, right? He spent years in the military, very high up actually, and he has on his page, you know, if you're looking to just learn songs, I'm not the guy for you. And I thought that's great, and that's why, you know, we started talking. I said that I love that tagline. You know, it's your if you want to learn guitar, come to me. If you want to learn songs, go to someone else. So he understands, and you know, maybe that comes from his military training, but he understands the fact that you know, learning the skills will give you the skills you need, so to speak, to learn the songs that you want to learn. So excellent. All right, so let's move on to open question time. Does anyone have a question? First, with their mic off, we'll get the question. So anyone? No. Trevor.
I did, unless anyone else is jumping in. Yeah, well, it was the sub-franchise thing that we were talking about the other day, because
yep.
I know that's something that you started up doing. So I was trying to find out a little more. I've had a look on the information on the site. So the deal is essentially I would get, if I took on if I took on another franchise, it would be at the second franchisee rate of $99. I could then sub-franchise that to somebody else for $250, but then I'd be responsible for providing the support to them and making sure that, you know, if they have problems, they come to me rather than be coming to you.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, one of the other questions I had about it was, you know, what would happen, for instance, if you set somebody up as a franchisee, sub-franchisee, and you maybe get a certain distance into it where they've invested some time and money and built it up, but for whatever reason you're having problems, you're having concerns with that person, what would happen? I mean, if you actually had to terminate that person as a franchisee and they've basically built up a business and they've got students and time and money and everything else that they've invested in it, how does that actually work? Because they presumably could turn around and say, you know, listen, I've spent all this time and money on building up a school, and, you know, what am I going to do if you turn around and tell me I can't be a franchisee anymore?
Well, the circumstances under which you would tell them that, remember that when they become a G4 franchisee, you're not responsible for them. So that if you're worried that, you know, give me an example under what circumstances you would want to cancel them.
All right, let's think. So supposing I had some complaints from maybe students or parents or something of that nature, and saying, oh, I think this person's doing some things that are inappropriate, and I raised the issues with them and tried to resolve it with them, and in the end it was something where they weren't going to change whatever it was they were doing, and it was something where I thought, I'm not really, you know, comfortable with people going to this person as a teacher because of what they're doing. So yep. You know, it'd be obviously have to be something fairly drastic, but yeah.
Yep. Look, I think in the whole time that I've been running G4, there's been, you know, there's been one or two people who, you know, aren't really right. You know, I can think of one guy who I got 3 separate complaints from, and considering that he probably had, you know, 7 or 8 students by the time these complaints started coming in, it was obvious to me that he, you know, this is a guy who, you know, his background wasn't great. He was very enthusiastic in the beginning, and he really wanted to make it work, but he just didn't have the patience with people, and it was this kind of aggressive nature that he had that was putting people off. And anyway, I ended up saying to him, look, I got a response from one of your complaintees, and you know, they told, and I've had a few complaints, and I said, look, what I'd like you to do is just to give them a refund, because that's part of our policy that we give refunds, and he just refused to give a refund. So what I did is I refunded them. I refunded the customer and said, I'm really sorry. And then I went back to him and I said, look, I don't know that G4 is going to work for you because of this policy that we have, you know, of refunding, and it's something that I would expect you to do as a G4 teacher. And he basically said, oh, well, I don't want to be a part of G4 then. And so it was pretty easy, and really the one other one that I could even think of, it was the same thing. He just said, not for me. He said, I don't agree with some of your policies, so therefore he pulled out. So I think that as long as there may be somebody in a case where it's extreme like that, and that's where you come to me and you just bring it to me and say, look, this particular person is very, very difficult. There are a lot of trouble. These are the complaints I've had. Blah 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 blah, and then leave it with me. And if really, as far as I'm concerned, if it comes to the point where you don't want them anymore as a sub-franchisee, then really the thing to do is to hand them over to me fully, so they become a franchisee of me. So then I support them, and then I have that decision of whether or not they can. So it means you're no longer going to be getting the money from them because obviously you're not supporting them. I'm directly supporting them, and so then you just transfer that over to me, so then they pay me directly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
All right. And hopefully it won't happen. And again, it'll be just a case, because there's a difference generally with people when they become an entrepreneur and it's their own business. They're not going to go to the way to upset people. They're not going to generally do the wrong thing because ultimately they're going to run out of money and they're not going to be able to afford to pay you. They're not going to have the business. It gets to a point where they can't afford it anyway. So they just go, well, I don't want to be part of G4, and that's part of the reason that it's set at a $250, because that's a price that the people who are serious about their business are willing to pay. If I made it, originally we thought about it making it a cheaper price and not giving much support and just letting anyone on, but then we realized no, that's going to attract just any. In the beginning we did it for a little while, and we were just finding we were attracting the wrong people. So at $250, what you're going to find is that you'll get the right kind of people, and that they will be doing everything they can to make their business work, and they'll be hopefully listening to you and taking advice. But if they're not, their business is going to collapse anyway, because they just won't have the money to be able to pay you after a while.
So in terms of the sort of mechanics of how it would work, I would essentially take out a franchise on a place, and it would then be up to me to advertise that to teachers in that area to say, look, why don't you consider becoming a franchisee of G4 and starting your school here? So
yep.
It's then, yeah, okay.
I'm even looking at this where if because I don't have enough time to do everything, obviously, but I'm getting now to the point where I'm getting inquiries coming through, and I'm even willing to farm them out to you guys to take care of it. So if I get someone, and these are people who are just filling in the form, maybe subscribing, but they're leaving their phone number, just like you get student inquiries filling in the form. A lot of them aren't going to be that serious, and a lot of them just want a bit of information or just curious about what we do. So you might find that you make 20 phone calls before you get someone who's genuine. But if you're interested in that, it might be easier for me to send them to you, especially if you're in the UK, and then maybe you can organise a meeting, with them, actually a one-on-one meeting rather than just the phone call. You ring them first and just say, hi, it's Trevor from G4. I'm actually a franchisee of G4. Dave passed me your details, and I'm just giving you a ring to see if you had any questions or wanted to learn more about G4. So I can even help you with what to say. And then if they're interested and you sign them up, then yeah, they become a franchisee of yours. Another option besides that one is that you can claim an area whenever you like. So while there's nobody paying for an area, then there's no claim. Nobody has a claim on it. But if you came to me and said, Dave, I'm going to pay you $99 for this area, even though I don't have anyone yet and I don't even have a school set up or whatever, and you start paying the $99, then that becomes yours. But you can't sort of just say, this is my area. I'll let you know when I find someone, and then we'll start from there. You can do that, but if someone else comes along and applies with me and starts paying, then that area's gone. Does that make any sense? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's completely clear.
Okay, cool. Any other questions on?
Nothing I can think of at the moment, but I'll probably come up with a few more, but I can email those to you as and when.
I'll elaborate on the self-franchise a little bit more, because it is a really big opportunity for any of you guys who are interested. And I know some of you will really run with this because it gives you the opportunity to take to position yourself really the same way that I am, and to grow your income to a much bigger level in a passive way. So the problem with students, and students aren't a problem. I hope that didn't come out the wrong way. But the thing about students is that you need to be there to teach them. It's a set thing that you need to do. They come each week at a certain time, and someone's got to be there to teach them. You also need a place to teach them in. So you need all that kind of thing, and that's going to suit 80% of you. 80% of you are going to be happy with that. You just want your own school. You want to have your students coming to that school. You might consider opening a second school, but 80% of members, I'm just guessing here, of course, are going to be happy with just their one school and trying to get to 100 students and make their £60,000 a year and be happy with that. But for the other 20%, which will vary, then what they have the option and the possibility of doing is recruiting other teachers to become G4 guitar franchisees as sub-franchisees, and then you can open as many as you want, and that you don't have to be there to run a weekly lesson. You don't even have to have a place like I do. I can just operate anywhere from the computer. So it just gives you it's a different option. It's a different lifestyle. That's what I wanted to do, is try and make it available to you guys, and that's why I'm not letting just anyone do it. Only you guys who have been with me for at least a year can take this option. Right.
Actually, so can I just ask Ken as well while we're on it?
Yeah, sure.
So, right, in terms of, obviously, it's down to me to provide support to sub-franchisees. So in terms of things like, for instance, getting the flyers, all the kind of marketing material, setting them up with a website, giving them passwords for their accounts, email addresses, and so on, does that mean that we would be doing all that? Would we be getting support from you on how we'd actually go about doing it, or what would the mechanics of all that be?
Yeah, I'd say what's going to happen is initially that I'll keep doing that. So because like the marketing now, once their details are on my system, it's a click of a button. I can print out the whole marketing sheet which has everything on. But what will happen, obviously, as this starts to grow and build, then I won't want to be sitting there doing it for 500 different franchisees. What I will do is give you the FileMaker file that allows you to do it, because it'll all be set up on FileMaker. So there'll end up being two FileMaker programs. One will be for the teachers running a school, like where you guys are now, but the other will be for an operator who's doing sub-franchises. So then you can create the forms yourself and give them, do most of the things they want. As far as the websites, if you don't want to do the websites, it'll be a case of, well, like I said, for now it'll still be okay. But what will eventually happen is that if you get a lot start building, then we'll need someone like Sizer or a second Sizer to be doing those for us as well. And she already knows how to do it, and she does a lot of that work for us anyway. And what she can then do is start training other people. So you could get an assistant, especially if you've got, say, 5 schools. Then you want to have a look. You want to look at getting an assistant, a VA, a virtual assistant, and then Sizer can actually teach your assistant to do the things that need to be done, such as the website and all that. So we're kind of building the structure as we go, and I can't give you definite answers on what's what at the moment. And but as we grow, because what I'm looking at is that my income or the profit of G4 won't just come from the $99, which is really for the franchise. It will also come from the FileMaker program, which will be something that they will have to pay for as well to manage their businesses. So there'll be kind of 2 levels of profit there, and then there'll be other things that we'll bring in. But also I'm going to be thinking about you guys, how you guys can make more money, because the way the whole system has to work is that I have to help you guys make more money if I expect to get more money from you. If you're not making any more money, then I can't. It doesn't work that way. And this is something that I learned years ago from Robbins. He said you've got to get the people who you're working with, who you're coaching and training, they've got to be earning as much as you. That's got to be the goal. You've got to get them to be able to potentially earn as much as you or more. And that's really my goal with you guys, is to give you the same opportunities that I've had and that I do have, and to help you get there faster, actually, so that you can leverage off G4. Right now, you don't have to go and build the whole G4 thing. You can now go and get franchisees, sub-franchisees, without actually building the platform. Now, because the platform's built, and that's why you will essentially build faster. One of the wealthiest guys in America, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he owned McDonald's franchises. I think he was one of the biggest owners of McDonald's franchises, and so he never built McDonald's. He didn't build any of the idea. He just went and bought all the franchises, and he became one of the wealthiest guys in the US. And it really is a smart way to do it, is to build off a platform that's already in place. So, all right.
That's great. Thank you.
Cool. So Paul, Ben, do you guys have any other questions you want to ask before we wrap up? All good?
Yeah, not for me.
All good,
All right.
thanks.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. I'll let you get back to your teaching, no doubt. It's the beginning of the day for you guys, so thanks again for dropping by, and I'll see you same time, same channel next week.
Cool.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Hi.
Bye.